You know, there's nothing I like better than lying on a sofa on a Sunday evening, a small dog on my lap and a magazine in hand. But wouldn't it be cool if there was a TV programme that I could watch? You know, one made for me, full of my interests, metal detecting, you know, tips and techniques, places to go, a look at equipment, you know, that kind of thing. Wouldn't that be cool?
He was left shaking with happiness after discovering a hoard of Bronze Age artifacts.
En tiedä, keni esti.
Coming up, Jules is back with history saver extraordinaire Andrew Cox, remembering the men of the 51st Bomber Group.
Apart from this small piece of metal which was recovered in the middle of an Essex field.
Laurie has been busy testing Minelab's range of pinpointers.
Remember, the smaller the item you're in pursuit of, the more essential a pinpointer becomes.
We meet a long-time detectorist and local historian who went to get a sandwich and found the find of a lifetime, you know, as you do.
I couldn't walk as far, so I walked the bottom of the field to my van to get a bacon butty. I got a signal.
There's also the first instalment of our Beginner's Guide series of special films. Can we get a busy film and TV actress to swap lights, camera and action for nights, mud and historical distraction?
So what is it that most people want to find?
A silver hammy will bring a smile to anybody's face.
But first of all, here's Jules introducing us to the world of aviation archaeology.
I'm on my way to meet a farmer and detectorist who has really played a part in uncovering history in this area. He's also a well-respected collector of World War II artefacts.
3,000 men have just turned up in a village with, I don't know, I would guess 300-400 people. They've got gum and cigarettes and they've got everything that all the locals just don't have. Every day going out to fly over Europe. That night you're in the pub, ready for the next morning to be back up in the air again.
And several of Andrew's finds have found a new home here at the Ridgewell Airfield Commemorative Museum. Opening its doors in 2000, the museum is a way of preserving artefacts and the story of the airfield, as well as the 381st Heavy Bombardment Group. It's run purely by volunteers. One such volunteer is the current chairman.
Andrew Cox, I consider him to be a magician. Some of the things he's conjured up over the years have been phenomenal. I don't know how he manages to do it. He must have some kind of inbuilt radar to pick this stuff up. But we have the high school ring that was found. He's managed to come across the dog tags. The important thing for us is to have a personal item. It's all well and good having a propeller or an Astrodome from a B-17, but ultimately we like to have a personal item because it tells a human interest story.
Dog tags are extremely personal items to find. Every serviceman would have been issued with 2 sets. He would have kept 2 dog tags on his person, and they were inspectable items, so they had to be on him. And he would have kept a set in his footlocker in case he lost his set that were around his neck. On the dog tag itself would have been his name, his army number. Early war, he would have had his next of kin, their address, blood type, and finally the religion. The religion stamps, the ones I've found, have been either a C for Catholic, P for Protestant, or H for Hebrew. And then later on, during the war, they realised as people were being taken prisoner of war, there was far too much information, so they removed the next of kin and their address. And so if you find the later ones, you've got a lot less information to go by.
Guns are not the only things to have silencers. You may have noticed in films and the such that some dog tags have a black rubber surround. This is simply a silencer to prevent the sound of dog tags clinking, and was introduced to limited numbers of infantry quite late in the war. The roar from the engines of a B-17 would make them pretty redundant for aircrew.
Around about 12 years ago, I was out detecting, and you know, an ordinary sort of day, nothing particularly exciting about it, and I had a signal which I dug, and it was a ring, which is always an exciting find at the best of times. And anyway, I cleaned it up as best I could, and I could see even in the field, you know, just by giving it a rub, that it was a graduation ring, and quite obviously American. And my hope was that it belonged to somebody who served at Ridgewall. And anyway, I got home, I cleaned the item up, and it transpired that it came from Birdsboro, Pennsylvania, and it was a graduation ring from 1941. I emailed Birdsboro Town Council to see if they got the school records for that particular year, which they hadn't. They were lost in a fire, unfortunately. And so it drew a bit of a blank. And 5 or so years later on, I thought I'd try again, and which also drew a blank. And by the power of social media, I was browsing one day and I came across a policeman from Birdsboro, Todd Peterson, his name is, and he told me that he would be able to get the school records, which he duly did, and I was then able to look against the school records and the unit roster of the men who served at Ridgewall, and the only guy who graduated in 1941 from Birdsboro High School was a chap named Ken Spatz, who unfortunately was killed when his aircraft took off. 10 men on his crew, they were all killed apart from the pilot and co-pilot. And I had found his ring, and I didn't think I'd be able to get much further than that. And then I had a message from Todd, the policeman, and he said, there is a Ken Spatz that lives just outside Birdsboro. He would contact him just on the off chance if he was a relation, and which he did. But it turned out that the Ken Spatz was my Ken Spatz's son. And after various phone calls and emails and bits and pieces, we got talking, and he decided he'd like to come over to the UK to collect his dad's ring and be taken to the crash site. And which he did. He came over a couple of summers ago with his wife, and it was just a fantastic thing to be involved with, to reunite him with his dad's ring. And all he had got until that point that belonged to his dad was a smoking pipe and 2 or 3 photographs, and that was it.
I don't make a habit of presenting really to men.
Oh my.
And so, you know, what a wonderful thing to be involved with doing. And it was a privilege. It was a privilege to be able to do it. while metal detecting on a disused airfield, I came across this small piece of metal, which at the time was quite nondescript. I didn't really think much of it until I got home and started to clean it up, and I noticed some white paint on there. And it's actually the call plate from a B-17 which came in after a raid on Frankfurt. It bellied in, all the crew got out, but unfortunately the plane was so badly damaged with 2 engines out that they decided to salvage the aircraft and use it as spare parts on others. The aircraft itself is called Mickey Finn. I do have some crew photographs of them basically celebrating that they'd all survived the mission and their failed landing. And to think that this piece of metal, as small as it is the only piece that's left of an aircraft, 32-metre wingspan and a 23-metre in length, is quite an incredible thing. The rest of it is gone. All we have is photos apart from this small piece of metal which was recovered in the middle of an Essex field.
It's funny, you know, but after being around the museum, I think I'm starting to hear those aero engines again. What a place, what a day.
My name's Dave Blakey and I've been detecting roughly 20 years. Every find that is to do with history is rewarding in itself for me, and I don't dwell on me finds. It's the instant gratification of that find coming out of the hole. Obviously everybody likes to find hammered coins, but I like to find Roman coins. And the more experience you get with your machine, you tend to listen to the tones and know when to walk away from a tone and when to dig. I'm a member of the Dunelm Metal Detecting Club, which is in Durham. I live quite close to the coast. I have been beach detecting, but I prefer going on ploughed land. I left detecting for a couple of years, bought a motorbike, and on a Sunday had a ride out to see where the rest of my friends who were continuing metal detecting were at, and I got persuaded to start again. After that, I had an ankle replacement, so I've got metal in me ankle, which doesn't give me a signal unless I wanted to. So I started again, and because of the replacement ankle, I couldn't walk as far, so I walked the bottom of the field, about 3/4 of the way back to my van to get a bacon butty. I got a signal. I thought it was a Coke can. I honestly believed it was a Coke can. And when I dug down and I was down 10 inches, I thought, oh, this is a deep coke can. So I called one of my friends over, and he says to me the exact words, "Keep on digging, Dave, it could be a hoard." And he walked away. So I kept on digging, and when I looked down, I saw the top of what I thought was a little burial urn. It was the size of a small saucer. And I thought, I found something good here. And so I did my little dance, looked round, and there was nobody. Everybody else was at the bottom of the field, and I was up there by myself. So I started dancing, hoping somebody would see me, and they did. And when they came over, we decided that it was something special. We rang every archaeologist we could think of, and it was a Sunday, so everywhere was shut. We even rang the British Museum, and they said, come back on Monday. So we decided to dig it, and we didn't know whether it was going to be a big round pot, a little pot, so we did a massive, massive donut. So we dug round, and we thought it would come from underneath. Now my spade is a garden spade that's cut down, so it's about 4 foot. Once we'd finished digging the hoard out, the top of my spade was level with the ground, so it was a good 4 foot down. The pot was about the size of a bowling ball, and the top was about that big. So that's the only thing I saw. It did have something over the top. When I dug it out, that was just a piece of pot over the top of the hole. So once I got the pot off the top, I saw a hole, and I didn't think it was going to be the size of a bowling ball. I thought it was going to be a cup size, and it was just a burial urn with a few items inside, which I would have been over the moon with. But we decided to do it properly because it was near a main road and we couldn't really leave it. I was prepared to camp out overnight. We took about 3 hours to dig it. We dug underneath and we lifted it in its entirety out onto the side of the hole. 2 of us lifted the pot out. I could not have done it myself. It was that heavy. Obviously the tractor, the plough, had clipped the pot at some time because there was a crack in the actual pot itself, and a piece was missing. So the coins had fallen out of the pot, and there was 5 of them that we recovered. As it turned out, there was 1,876 coins inside the pot, and it took 3 months for the British Museum to excavate it. And the information they got showed that the pot was laid down in 307 AD in the springtime. They knew that it was laid in the springtime because they'd found caterpillar husks on the coins themselves. I got a database full of the coins that they could identify. All the coins were round about the same age, Constantine, apart from one, which was Hadrian. And they do not understand why that one coin was a Hadrian coin from a lot earlier than the rest of the Constantine ones. The amount of coins was a month's wage for the average labourer. Down south there's been bigger finds, and at the time of my find there was 3 hoards in getting excavated. 2 from the south and mine from the north. The other hoards were more of a scattered hoard where the pot had completely gone. But as regards the hoard I found, yes, it was the biggest hoard in the north. The British Museum, and especially the curator of York Museum who acquired the hoard, is over the moon, and I didn't empty it on site. Because our club is a responsible club and we are responsible detectorists, we decided to let the archaeologists do their job. We'd done our job, we'd found it. It is a fantastic display in York Museum, and to see the coins held up with them falling out of the pot to a pool. I don't feel like a celebrity. Every new member that comes into the club gets invited to listen to my story, which I don't mind telling, but a lot of the other members pull my leg about it, but it's in good humour, good nature. It made quite a bit of difference to me. It allowed me to buy a new detector, a new camera, a new van. So yes, it did make a difference. It set me off for what I'd say for the rest of my life. A coin that's found in the fields, not so common nowadays, is a coin with a hole in it. When the Commonwealth people wanted to show that they pinned a coin to the door. They used a nail, and that's how the hole got in these Commonwealth coins. Another coin that's regularly found is Elizabeth coins. The bust nearly always tends to be worn away. The theory behind this is that she wasn't a well-liked monarch, and people rubbed her face off. Another common find is a love token. You think, well, why is a coin bent like that? The reason is that two coins are shaped into a figure S, and one of them is given to a person who you might feel attracted to, and if she keeps it or he keeps it, you are in. If they get thrown away or discarded in any way, which is why we find them in the fields, sorry, but you're out. In one of my boxes I've got a hawking whistle, which is used to call the hawks back. It still works. I've cleaned it all out, and when I blow it, it gives a high-pitched sound. One of my smallest finds is an Irish Edward I farthing. I know it's Irish because it's got a triangle on the back. I think the Scottish ones have got thistles on. You don't tend to find that many of them on this side of the country. There's a couple of hammered coins people call short cross, long cross. There's also another one called voided. Now, the void is the void or the hole between inside the cross itself. So instead of just having two lines crossing, you've got two coming down and two going horizontal. The small cannonade is a find that I quite like. It's a small cannon that if you look on the TV and watch a pirate story, it's normally the little cannon on the stern of a ship. To find one of them in a field, it's not the farmer that's going to be shooting these, so there must have been something going on, a skirmish. It might have even been an army range. Nobody knows why they're found. A lot of lead finds are found in fields, because obviously metal of the consistency of lead was easy to work. We find little rings of lead, some with patterns, some are plain, spindle whorls. They were used to spin the wool off the sheep. They put a stick through them and spun it, and that put it into like a twine, so you end up with a thread of wool. One of my favourite finds from the fields are thimbles. I don't know why I've got the affinity for thimbles, but some of them are quite old. The beehive ones tend to be a bronzy alloy. Others can be silver, they're quite expensive ones. What a silver thimble is doing on a field, I do not know. It could be something to do with mending clothing. Women sat round the edge of the field again. One of the brooches you can find are fibula brooches from obviously the Romans that were using to tie their togas, but there's umpteen different sizes. There's knee fibulas, there's all sorts of bronze, silver brooches that the Roman used because they didn't have safety pins, so it was classed as like a big safety pin. Very rarely you get the actual pin surviving because I think they were made of iron. Obviously, a Roman fibula brooch is a nice find, and some of them are quite decorative. One of the funny things you find in there in a field is jaw harps or Jew's harps, which are the mouth harps that you play with your teeth and the shape of your mouth. I've got quite a few, so maybe that was the entertainment at dinner time after you've finished working in the fields. Every find of interest, shall we say, is photographed, and the farmer tends to get all them photographs. Sometimes we even donate things to the farmer, or if the farmer shows an interest, Even things like a dog collar. It might have been his sheepdog and it was lost in the field, but that dog died 10 years ago. As a club, that we are heavily involved and we invest a lot of time and effort in the farmer, because without his permission, we wouldn't have a hobby.
Any bit of detecting kit is a bit like choosing footwear. You need to think about what you're going to do with it. Wearing plimsolls up Ben Nevis? No way. Or stilettos on a bouncy castle? Well...
And it's the same with detectors. What is good for general detecting won't always be good for every task. Pinpointing is a great example of this.
We might call it metal detecting, but what it really is metal finding. Detecting something is there isn't enough. Once you've done that, you often need to pinpoint it. And yes, many modern metal detectors come with an inbuilt pinpointer function. But using a coil to locate a coin at the bottom of a hole is going to be a little bit cumbersome. Remember, the smaller the item you're in pursuit of, the more essential a pinpointer becomes. Handheld pinpointers do not have an easy life. They face years of use and the odd bit of abuse. And let's never forget, a pinpointer is not a trowel. It's also not a substitute for a main shaft detector. But a good pinpointer is easy to use, reliable, and tough.
Dedicated pinpointers haven't really changed much in appearance since the first ones found their way onto the market almost 20 years ago. Before that, detectorists experimented with small handheld detectors from DIY stores with mixed results. There had to be a better way. Minelab offer 3 models, the Pro Find 15, 20 and 35. To get the best out of these pinpointers, there are a few things that are good to know.
They take 9-volt batteries, all of the Pro Find pinpointers, and you need to buy good quality ones. The cheap ones won't last very long.
All are splashproof, with only the 20 and 35 being waterproof.
The other thing you need to know is they have this serial code on the back, and that is your warranty. So you will need to protect that somehow, because if you wear it off, that's your warranty invalidated. So maybe a bit of lacquer on top of that.
These labels do add an element of security, because if it's stolen and sold, it can't be removed without voiding that warranty. Let's dive in and take a close look at each pinpointer.
The 15 is the entry-level pinpointer in the Pro Find range. It's a great budget pinpointer. Like all the Pro Find pinpointers, it's this bright yellow color. So if for some reason you put it down in the mud, it'll be easy to find it again. But if for some reason you don't find it again, it's got a lost alarm indicator, which will bleep at you to come back and pick it up. It also comes with a holster, so hopefully you won't leave it behind because you'll just slot it back in your belt. It has the best battery life out of all the Pro Find pinpointers, and it meets our easy to use, tough and reliable tests of what makes a good pinpointer. The 20 is the middle sibling in the Pro Find range, and it adds on the features of the 15. It adds waterproofing down to 1.5 meters, it adds vibration, and it adds the ability to turn the audio off to help save your battery. Like the 15, you can't adjust the sensitivity or the audio volume. And last, but certainly not least, we come to the 35, which is the top of the range in the Pro Find pinpointers. Now, we get lots of features added in with this one. We get 5 levels of adjustable sensitivity. We get our waterproofing increased to 3 meters. We get a lanyard thrown in. We get a wee torch that comes on so you can see the finds down in the bottom of the hole. And we get a feature that you don't see very much in pinpointers. We get the ability to discriminate iron. It has a special tone that it makes when there's iron in the hole. And that's really unusual. The placement of the speaker means that it does collect mud, but it's fairly easy to knock it out. And when I first got it, I found I wanted to put my thumb right where the speaker was, but I soon got used to it. It's a great featured pinpointer, and if you have a large coil that finds things deep, that level 5 sensitivity will really come in handy.
Well, that's enough talk. Let's get out into the field. Today's conditions are cold. We've had the odd bit of rain, so the ground has some moisture in it. We just pop it onto the drop cloth and it keeps the site as clean as possible. When we were taking these shots, one thing we noticed was just how quickly the grip material dried. And even when it was wet, it didn't slip in the hand. So one of the things you need to do is put some silicone grease or Vaseline on this cap on any of the models of the Pro Find, especially if you've lost strength in your fingers or your grip's not as strong as it used to be. Putting a bit of silicone grease or Vaseline on this won't hurt with your waterproofing, but it'll also enable you to be able to get that loose when you need to change the battery. Because as you can see, it's quite slippy, and trying to get hold of it and put the force on it can be quite difficult. Yeah. So, one of the things I'd like to mention is it can be very difficult to see which way the battery goes in because the plus minus signs are deep in there and they're molded into the black. So you might need a torch in your reading glasses. I certainly found it tricky to figure out which way the battery went in. Though I suppose if you put it in the wrong way, it just won't work. Okay, so this is the 35. You turn it on and you wait for it to make those tones, which tells you that it has acclimatized itself to the setting. It's ground balanced itself. You don't want to turn it on near any metal because it will discriminate that out. You want to turn it on away from your signal and then move it into the hole. Otherwise, it thinks it's part of the environmental factors and it can take it out. So the 35 has 5 sensitivity levels. It turns on at level 1, and to turn it up, again, back to our quality of needing to be easy to use, press the plus once, twice, 3, 4, and when it makes the long tone, then you know it is on maximum with very high sensitivity. And I have found using this pinpointer over a find that was actually quite a large piece of metal, that having it like this, you came anywhere near the hole and it was going off, as you can hear. Now, the find is on this side. I'm going to turn this back down. That is base sensitivity because it's made the long beep again. This is where the 15 and the 20 operate. When I put that in the hole on this sensitivity, it can't see the find. So for this particular hole, because I've dug it off center, the 15 and the 20 won't see it. So with level 3 enabled, look, we can get the find now. So the 15 and the 20 wouldn't find this because I've dug the plug off center. But the 35 does find it because we can turn the sensitivity up and it's just in here. So let's get the hoary knife out, increase the size of this plug and see what we've got. Let's see if we can see what this is.
Let's see, is that it loose? Let's check with the pinpointer. You see this? So it's reacting to these rocks, which is really strange. We'll need to take them out and clean them up to see what they are, but that seems to be what it's reacting to. These two rocks. Very, very odd, but that's what it's detected.
Having spent the day outdoors, it's time to get back to some warmth. I've had a chance to use all 3 Pro Pointers in the wild, just like these, well, let's say, much loved boots, and here's what I think.
For pinpointers, if you're always in the dry, then a basic model will work just fine. In fact, they're a bit of a bargain. For longer detecting sessions, within the Pro Find range, the 15 has the longest battery life, wrapped up with all-round ease of use. The 20 and 35 add vibration. And if you have any hearing loss at all, like me, you'll use this feature a lot, particularly if the weather's being a bit, well, British. It can be hard to hear the tones with your hood up. If you are digging a lot of holes, the Pro Find 35's iron discrimination is a rare feature that may help you pinpoint ferrous that your main detector has notched out. This is the slag that we found earlier, and this is what the Pro Find's ferrous tones sound like.
That's more of a grunt, and it's quite different compared to the clean, solid tone from this 35 that's sitting right over a silver coin. To switch on the iron tone on the 35, just long press the volume plus button for 3 seconds. When you hear the long tone, you have the iron tone switched on.
Some pinpointers offer many different features, but they get so complicated they're impossible to use. Remember, simplicity is a feature in itself.
I'm Leah, I'm an actor by trade and I want to learn how to do some metal detecting. I don't really know anything about metal detecting, to be honest. I've seen people on the beach doing it, but I wasn't really sure what they were doing or why they were doing it. I know there was that comedy, The Detectorist. I think I saw a little clip of it. I've seen adverts for like TV programs like The Dig, I think. I don't know, that was like archaeology. But I've seen things come up on TV, but I've never really actually watched them. So I should really do that, shouldn't I? I'm hoping to learn everything really, like the history of metal detecting, what equipment that I need to use, how to get the equipment, if there's anything in particular I need to wear. I'm hoping I can learn, why people do it, like the history of metal detecting, why it's getting more popular, if it's a hobby that I'll enjoy. Also, if there's a group maybe that I can join that could help me afterwards. Everything.
And if you're about to start your detecting adventure, then don't fear, we've got the perfect detecting buddy for you. It's only Laurie McGregor.
So this all looks really impressive. So do we just take the equipment and get started?
No. You need to know about where you can go, where it's legal, what things you need to know about detecting and how you put the kit on, what you need. There's lots of things to talk about before we go out. First and foremost, you need to have permission for where you're going to detect, because you can't just go anywhere. Specifically, you mustn't go on any scheduled ancient monuments within this country. Those are protected, and no. You need permission from the landowner. So if you own your own house, then you can go out in the back garden. But if you rent the house, you would need permission of the person that owns it. Even if you do have the permission of the landowner, say there's a tenant farmer on the site, you must have the permission of the tenant farmer too. You can't get a sole permission from the tenant farmer, but they can stop you. So you would need permission from both. Sometimes the landowner will organize that, but you could have permission from a landowner, go out, and somebody comes along and goes, I rent this farm, you can't be here. And you would have to stop until you got that sorted out between the two of them. It's very important that you have the permission for the site you go on, unless you go to the beach. Because in the UK, 51% of the shoreline is owned by the Crown, and you can use that for detecting, provided it's not been leased out to the military or some kind of aquaculture, things like that. You can go onto the beach, but you mustn't go higher than the highest tide line. So from the highest tide line down to the lowest tide line is where you can detect, not up in the dunes. That's really important to stick within that area. There is an online website that you can go and you can see what areas are owned by the Crown and what areas are not. In England, in Scotland, you need to write to the Crown Office and they'll tell you and send you a wee map. That's quite important. But in the UK, nobody is further than 71 miles from the coastline. So it is accessible to people, and it's where a lot of folks start.
So how would I know what kind of metal detector to buy?
Your most important piece of equipment is your detector. And that is the one that you need to do your research on, because you need to buy the right machine for you. There are detectors that are really good on the beach. There are detectors that are really good on land. There are ones that you don't have to learn anything and you turn it on and go. There are ones that are more complicated. There are ones specifically for gold prospecting. So you want to find out what kind of detecting you're going to be doing mostly, and then match your machine to that, because otherwise you're going to get frustrated. After that, protective clothing, to me, is my second most important, because we have weather in Britain that is quite British, and if you are cold and wet, you're going to be miserable. You're not going to want to go out. Footwear, keep your feet warm and dry. Make sure that you've got good quality footwear and clothing just to protect you. And after that, a spade. You want to get a good spade. There are quite small ones that are inexpensive that are really good to start out with. The one that we have down here is the Loxley, and it is a cracking little spade. But if you were to use that over a very long day, it can get quite tiresome and your back can get sore, and so you'd want a longer handled one. So thinking about, again, how long the sessions are going to be, which type of spade you want, because you don't want to hurt your back, because then again you can't detect.
Oh, wow. So what is it that most people want to find? Like, what's kind of the gold dust of the world?
So the star find for most detectors is going to be a gold coin, either a Celtic stater if you happen to be in England, a Roman gold coin if you're in the north of England. It's a gold coin. It's just the thing. But it's not to sell. And people get this idea about detectorists are just in it for money to get the stuff and sell it off. And no, every detectorist I've ever met, it's about the history. It's about saving the history and just the thrill of discovery for something that's lost and being found again. You can't detect below the plough line. You're not supposed to detect. The law says, the plough line's your limit. So it's stuff that's not in any kind of stratification. It's just stuff that's just been churned up in the plough, and so you want to find it and bring it to light to the world again. But a gold coin is probably the top of the list. But it depends on where you are and how new you are to detecting. In Scotland, a lot of detectorists' main bucket item is a crotal bell. which is like a sleigh bell for animals, because we just don't get them up there. Whereas when you're in Wales, you're tripping over them. It's just what's around where you are. And then for newer detectorists, that item that they are really shooting for, that brass ring, is going to be a silver hammered coin. And that's back when they made coins by stamping them out with a die, rather than the nice milled ones that we've got now that are punched out. And those hammered coins, a silver hammy, will bring a smile to anybody's face.
So if I do really enjoy the next few days and I decide I want to meet people who, you know, are metal detectors.
Metal detectorists.
Yeah, I mean metal detectorist. Then how do I go about it? Like, how do I find these groups? Can anyone join? Can complete beginners like me join? Or what do I have to do?
So, how to find a club? There are different types of clubs in different parts of the UK, and some are closed, some have waiting lists, some are newly formed. I know of clubs that have been formed because people want something like in the comedy The Detectorist, where they can go along and listen to talks about buttons and go to the pub and have a social group. Some are more about just getting onto permissions, and that's what they exist for. They will all help you. If you can get into them, they will help you. They will loan detectors. They will give you advice. To find them, the best thing to do is either the Detectorist Network or searching online, looking on Facebook, or your retailer. For instance, Crawfords Metal Detecting. You know, if you get in touch with them, they may know groups in your area that you can get in contact with. But just put in your area and Metal Detecting Club into a search engine and get in touch and speak to them. So over the next few days, what we're going to do is I'm going to explain all the equipment to you, and then we're going to get you kitted up. We're going to head out to a beach, and I'm going to show you how to swing the detector, what the tones it's making mean, and how it shows you what signal is you want and you don't want. After that, we'll go to some farmland, and I'll show you how it is different to detect on soil as opposed to at the beach. And then we'll get back together again, and we'll talk about what you've learned, what you liked about it, and answer any other questions you might have.
Oh, that sounds really good.
Do you know, I think we may have welcomed a new detectorist to our hobby.
Oh, that's the end of our third programme, but don't worry, there are more on the way. And also keep your comments coming, please, because we can use those comments, good and bad, to help us make these programmes better and better for you, all right? Hit the like and the subscribe button too, and keep your photographs coming in. Look, Stephen sent us this in from his collection. Would you like to see your photographs featured here? See you on the next one. Bye.
We're all searching from the cradle to the grave, scattered secrets waiting to be saved. In the meantime, don't you worry, and take your time, don't hurry. Dig on, dig on. Have a little patience, but most of all, have a little fun. And keep on swinging, and daybreak through till night, and keep it singing. And man, you'll do alright. In the meantime, don't you worry. Take your time, don't worry. Dig on, yeah. Have a little patience, but most of all, have a little fun. Don't matter what you find, man, where life. Dig on,